sourdough starter. It's amazing. Let's make some.
All we need is flour and water. If this was a long-term grid down or evacuation kind of situation, some sort of emergency, I can't imagine anything more comforting than homemade sourdough bread. So let's make some starter. First off, we need flour. I'm just going to use a small amount because I don't want any waste. I can't imagine that the pioneers out and back when they're traveling across the plains did discards and threw stuff out. That's beyond me to even imagine that. I'm using my special sourdough spoon. One of my daughters gave this to me years ago. I don't know what kind of wood this is. I don't remember. Olive wood, maybe? I don't remember. Anyway, I love it. I think of it as my magic sourdough spoon. So I did 2 sort of rounded tablespoons of just plain flour. And it's all-purpose, unbleached organic flour. Nothing special. I'm going to do about that much. And the whole idea is to make sure that you have all the flour moistened. If that's not enough, I'm going to add some more flour. I'm not measuring it by weight. I'm not measuring it by exact measurements. I'm going to measure it so that it's going to work. And you need enough water to dampen all that flour. I'm here in my minivan camper, my modern day covered wagon. I think we need a little bit more water than that. You just use enough. You know, I've seen sourdough starter that was super dry. I've seen it was super wet, sloppy, and it still works. So I don't think you need to get all fancy with scales and stuff. Now you can, and that's wonderful, and everything will be exact, and you'll probably have better success overall long term. But this works. And if I were out, if I'd had to evacuate and I had flour and water, I could make bread. Salt makes it nicer. I would want to have some salt. Now this, as you can see, is not soupy. And I'm just gonna try it like this time and see how it does, because I don't want to end up with a bunch of discards and waste anything. This is the first day. Let's see how this does. It's been about 24 hours. It's been fed twice. I started it and I fed it once 12 hours later. I take out about half of it. I don't want to end up with a whole lot in here, but I don't want to waste anything either. So I'll take about half of it and put it in this other jar. And this other jar, oh, look at the consistency of it. Wow. Put it in this other jar. And then I'll keep this for pancakes in the morning. That sounds super good to me. And I could keep it for a couple of days in the ice chest if I weren't going to make pancakes tomorrow. I can just keep it for a little bit. Okay. But in the meantime, and I keep a different kind of lid on it, put it in the ice chest so that I know the difference. So there's that. That's the leftover part. That's what you would call discard, and people would normally throw that out. I'm going to put it in pancakes in the morning. Now, it's time to feed this. I've got flour and water, just like yesterday. Just like this morning, because I'm feeding it every 2 hours, or every 12 hours, I'm sorry. So I got that spoon dirty. I'm going to use this one just to measure. Got one. And it's probably not exactly the same size, but you know what? That's not what matters. It's the proportion together. Let's see about how much water I need. And I'll just stir it up and see. Because like I've said before, it's just what works is what matters. If it seems like the flour doesn't have enough water, then I'll add some more. If it seems too soupy, I'll put in a little bit more flour, but I'm trying to go slow because I don't want to use very much flour and I don't want to use very much water, because in a grid down situation or some sort of emergency situation, we're going to have to be careful with our flour and our water. So we don't want to use too much of either one. We want to use just enough to get the job done. So I've been feeding my sourdough starter. I take out half of it every day and then feed it. So I give it a couple big spoonfuls of flour and a couple smaller spoonfuls of water, since water is heavier than flour. And then I let it sit for 12 hours and I do it again. There's my sourdough starter, waiting in the cup holder of my minivan camper, working away, ready to be put into the bread dough tonight, rise overnight, and then bake tomorrow. So this is the sourdough starter that I showed you earlier that was riding along in the cup holder in my minivan camper. And it started right at the rubber band, and that's what it's done today, and it's glorious. So pretty. It's already started to shrink down again. It must have run out of food. It must need more flour. So we'll just put it in the bread and see how it goes. This is going to be an experiment anyway, so I'll show you, and then I'll show you the results, good or bad. Because, oops, there's a little friend trying to join our party. We got rid of that little friend. A little flying trick is to make the right amount of bread dough to fit in my little 2-quart Dutch oven. I'm going to put a lid on it and let it sit overnight and hope it doesn't pop the top off of my bowl. We're going to check it. I was concerned that it was going to rise up to the top of the lid and burn, and it did. It's not burned, and it sounds nice and hollow. We're going to pull it off. Yum!